Welcome to News Today. I am Amiesi Nyamiche Thompson. In the next hour, more than 30% increase in persons killed due to road traffic accidents in July 2023 compared to the same period last year. We have details from latest figures from the National Road Safety Authority. Also, death toll from the northeast floods climbs to 8 with more floods expected as the Bagri Dam is opened. We have details. And Niger coup leader General Chiani promises to hand over power in 3 years. How so? We'll tell you, plus how South African President Cyril Ramaphosa intends to work with the AU to restore constitutional order in countries experiencing coup. Details of these and more, plus business in this hour. Stay tuned. Let's take you live now to the Bank of Ghana head office, where the Governor Ernest Addison is addressing a news conference on reported losses the bank has incurred.
Close the financing gap. It is important to state that a significant part of the annual borrowing was just to meet debt service and energy payment obligations, given that Ghana's annual external debt service payments and energy payments alone had risen to the range of $3 to $4 billion annually as at 2020. Losing access to the international capital market for new financing immediately triggered a liquidity crisis for government, spilling over into a balance of payments crisis, as the country had to continue to honor its debt service obligations, energy payments, and import bill. In keeping up with these critical external payments, the Bank of Ghana lost $500 million in external reserves in just 2 months, with no new inflows of foreign currency from the usual annual Eurobond issuance to replenish its reserves. Furthermore, to help address government's liquidity crisis, the bank extended additional overdraft to the government to address auction failures and prevent domestic default, and enabled government to meet domestic debt obligations and other critical payments needed to avoid a disorderly halt to economic activity. Throughout the first half of 2022, there was no new foreign financing until July, when the Afri-Exim Bank stepped in to support with $750 million. This is a typical replay of what is referred to in the literature as a first-generation macroeconomic and balance of payments crisis. You would recall that many people doubted if the economy was in crisis because they did not hear that interest rates on bonds were not being paid in early 2022. They did not see queues at the pump for petrol and diesel. There were no shortages of international essential items on the market, and they did not hear that public sector workers, including civil servants, the police and the military, were not being paid their salaries. The reason was that the Bank of Ghana had provided the needed support to keep the economy going. These are the circumstances that led government to approach the IMF for support in July 2022. The IMF immediately sent in a mission to assess the economic situation. The mission concluded that the economy was at a tipping point, and it was agreed with the understanding of the IMF that the Bank of Ghana should continue to provide the necessary support to keep the economy running until a reform program had been put in place, which will trigger IMF financing. The portrait painted above of the Ghanaian economy in 2022 was similar to what pertained in many other frontier and emerging market economies. Key among countries with similar experiences were Egypt, Argentina, Turkey, Kenya, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, just to mention a few. What separated these countries and their ability to hold their economies until a package of reforms were introduced was the availability of policy buffers and resilience of key policy institutions. We all know what happened in Sri Lanka. The Bank of Ghana was able to step in with the support to the economy until the IMF program was concluded because of policy buffers built following years of prudent management. This is a reflection of the resilience of the bank for being able to rise up to the occasion to play its statutory role as lender of last resort. Economic history also teaches us that crises are part of the business cycle, and the accumulation of policy buffers is the only way to guarantee space to deal with such crises. And this is clearly the role that the bank played with distinction. Now, let me shift my remarks to the corrective measures that were put into place in 2022 to manage the crisis. In particular, the major policy effort designed to put Ghana's debt on a sustainable path. These corrections, or these corrective actions, included the Domestic Debt Exchange Program, where the stock of Government of Ghana public sector debt was to be halved from 105% of GDP to 55% of GDP by 2028. The holders of government debt had their instruments exchanged for new ones with lower coupon payments and longer tenors. Despite the resulting losses incurred by households, banks, and other financial institutions, the threshold of 55% of GDP was not met. As part of the solution, the Minister of Finance wrote to the bank with a proposed treatment of a 50% haircut on Bank of Ghana's holdings of government's non-marketable debt. Naturally, the bank was concerned and fully aware of the implications of such a treatment on the books of the bank. We held several discussions with the Ministry of Finance, the government advisors on the debt exchange, that is Lazard, and the IMF on this treatment. At the request of the bank, the IMF sent a technical mission of central bank balance sheet experts to assist the Bank of Ghana to assess how the debt treatment would impact the bank's financial position and its ability to carry out its statutory mandate. The conclusion of that technical assistance mission was that the Bank of Ghana should be able to function effectively, that is, remain policy solvent, even after the imposition of such a haircut. The IMF placed a high premium on this particular debt scenario involving that Bank of Ghana, as that was the only scenario that was going to allow the government to meet the debt threshold that would allow Ghana's IMF program to proceed for board approval. The Bank of Ghana accepted this proposal on that basis, given how crucial it was to secure the fund-supported program and the benefits that would inure to the economy, as it would help to reset the economy and prevent a total collapse with much broader socio-economic implications. A Bank of Ghana board meeting was therefore arranged to get the board pass a resolution to this effect. The bank acted in good faith for the broader interest of Ghana's economy. The debt included all the legacy debts of Government of Ghana dating back to 1992, including the overdraft of 2022, overdraft to Cocoa Board, the COVID-19 bond, and even Bank of Ghana holdings of Telecom Malaysia bonds and the Tema Oil Refinery bonds issued by government. As of 2015, the accumulated claims on government and Cocoa Board were about 13 billion Ghana cedis. The debt, therefore, is not about recent debt alone. Almost all lending from the IMF, including the external credit facility and rapid credit facility during the COVID-19 pandemic, and financial sector resolution bonds, have been presented in the recent discourse as Bank of Ghana lending to government. This is not factual. It is important to state that losses reported were technical losses arising from the haircut and the application of accounting standards, in particular IFRS 9, to estimate expected credit losses over the tenor of the government debt held by Bank of Ghana. It is not money lost by the Bank of Ghana through its operations in 2022. Rather, one should look at this as a reflection of the total cost of the economic and social crisis that the country has faced over the years, and an attempt to resolve a major structural problem of the Ghanaian economy. I must also add that if one takes time to go through the historical financial statements of the Bank of Ghana, you will realize that this is not the first time that the bank has gone into negative equity. During the early years of the structural adjustment, very large exchange rate depreciations led to revaluation losses that drove the bank into negative equity. Indeed, any time the economy faces major challenges, the Bank of Ghana's balance sheet suffers, and the equity position moves into negative territories. You will recall that in 2017 and 2018, the bank incurred similar negative equity from the impairment of legacy liquidity support loans granted in 2015 and 2016 to insolvent banks, which the external auditors impaired due to the doubtful prospects of recovering from those insolvent banks. The bank, however, recovered and generated profits throughout the period 2019 to 2021. It is worth noting that central banks are not commercial banks. Bank of Ghana's current financial condition would not negatively impact on the operations of the bank. The IMF Technical Assistance Mission validated this conclusion before the necessary decisions were taken. In their opinion, the Bank of Ghana was policy solvent and will remain so, as it had enough income to cover monetary policy operational costs. The Bank of Ghana had sufficient capital, amounting to about 15% of its total liabilities. Its recommendation was for the bank to retain all future profits, and a reassessment should be made in the year 2027. The bank will also manage to reduce its operational costs during this period. Ladies and gentlemen, in all these, the Bank of Ghana has acted within the applicable laws. It is not true that the Bank of Ghana has been providing financing for government every year. There has been zero financing in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2021. The Bank of Ghana has only had to support in the pandemic year of 2020 and the crisis year of 2022. The Bank of Ghana Act, as amended, limits financing of the government to 5% of the previous year's tax revenue. This provision in the law has been adhered to since I took office in April 2017. Between 2017 and 2019, in addition to the requirements of the Act, the bank signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Finance to even impose a tighter restriction of zero central bank financing. And this was observed strictly, even though the MOUs were not legally binding. Between 2012 and 2015, the bank provided overdraft to finance government and Cocoa Board every year, and there was neither a pandemic or a global economic crisis. When Ghana was hit with the COVID-19 in 2020, Section 36 of the Bank of Ghana Act as amended was triggered, and as indicated earlier, the bank purchased the 10 billion cedis worth of the COVID-19 bonds to support the economy through the pandemic. This was done within the applicable laws governing the Bank of Ghana. When Section 36 of the Act as amended is triggered, it allows the Governor, the Minister of Finance, and the Controller and Accountant General to agree on a new limit of central bank financing. The law further says that the Minister of Finance will then have to inform Parliament, and the Minister has since informed Parliament as part of his briefing to update Parliament on the IMF program and the status of the domestic debt exchange. Let me also seize this opportunity to talk about an issue that has come up lately in the media and one which borders on our new head office building. While discussions on the national security issue, like the central bank building, is a sensitive one, I will provide you with a brief history of how this has evolved over the years. The Bank of Ghana, as far back as the 1990s, began the search for a suitable and secured land for a head office. In 2012, the bank was allocated an unnumbered 5.19-acre land at Accra Central by the Lands Commission, which also had issues. The bank did not have access to the land, since the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration refused to give the bank vacant possession on the grounds that they had never agreed to give up ownership of the land. The bank continued to search for suitable land for its head office throughout the period from 2013 to 2016. More recently, in 2018, the bank approached the State Insurance Corporation to acquire its vacant land at Ridge, near the Ridge Hospital. The government issued an executive instrument to allow the Bank of Ghana acquire that land, and SIC was duly compensated. The bank then began to plan the building of its new head office, taking into consideration the need to ensure that the building meets all the requirements of a modern central bank of international standards, similar to central bank head office buildings in Abuja and Dakar, and includes provision for data centers, currency processing centers, vaults, and other sensitive installations. It is not just a simple, ordinary building. Let me re-emphasize that the bank followed all the necessary public procurement processes in this endeavor. No procurement laws were broken. I have requested that a more detailed response to the issues raised in the public discourse on the bank's new head office be published on our website immediately after this press engagement today. The decision to commence construction was taken as far back as 2019, when the bank generated profits. Appropriations for the head office were made each year from profits made in 2019, 2020, and 2021. The project has therefore been going on for over 3 years. The DDEP only took place in January 2023. If we were to be taking the decision today, building a legacy head office would not have been a priority. However, this is a project that has been running for 3 years and about 50% complete. The bank is fully aware of its responsibilities to ensure that the costs do not escalate beyond reasonable levels, and that many of the original design features, including the data center, the currency processing center, ICT equipment, and specialized security features will have been deferred, and only gray boxes provided for future use to manage costs. Let me end by reassuring the public on the policy solvency of Bank of Ghana to achieve its statutory mandate going forward. Every central bank's credibility depends on its ability to achieve its mandate. These technical losses do not jeopardize that ability and are sometimes the price to pay for achieving those aims. It is important that we place the central bank's policy mandate above profits. We must recognize the special character of central banks and the role that they play in an economy. Central banks are institutions of policy, public policy, and do not exist for profits, but for national welfare, and as such, could have a negative equity position and continue to be policy effective. Very clear policies have been put in place to return to positive equity in the medium term. And as we do this, we will continue to rebuild our policy buffers to continue to provide the necessary assurance of policy support as we build a stronger and a more resilient and inclusive economy post-pandemic. Thank you very much.
Governor.
I don't want questions that we have already provided answers for.
Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
So,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So we'll take a question. One question from each of the media.
And so you heard the governor of the Bank of Ghana giving details of losses that the bank incurred in its financial year in 2022, and also responding to allegations in the public domain about their new head office building. And he's been saying that the Bank of Ghana started construction way back in 2029 and has been going on through 2020 till this year, 2023, and that is being financed by profits made in 2019 through to this year, and that it hasn't been using money that has been lost since the DDEP began in this year. We'll be bringing you more on that, and we'll also be going live to our correspondent and business editor, George Riafe, for more updates on that as we go. Now moving on, 43 persons died through road traffic accidents in July 2023 compared to the same period in 2022. These are figures contained in the latest data on road traffic casualties published by the National Road Safety Authority. According to the data, 1,328 people died through crashes in July this year compared to 1,221 recorded last year. Let's take a look at the highlights and various breakdowns as given to us by the National Road Safety Authority. And on your screen, we have the numbers that have been coming in between January to July 2023. The data says that cases reported in January to July 2023, which is the yellow color you're seeing on your screen, is 8,137. In 2022, within that same period, it was much higher, which is 8,869. Vehicles involved were 13,862, and in 2022 were slightly higher, over 2,000 higher, by 15,239. Persons killed in January to July 2023 in the same period is 1,272. and 1,443 in January to July 2022. Persons injured, 9,135 in 2023 and 9,228 in 2022. Pedestrian knockdowns were much less in January 2023, that is 1,418 and 1,580 in 2022. On your screen now is percentage change in the crashes in January to July, comparing July 2022 to July 2023. And we have minus 8.25% as cases reported. And then vehicles involved, when you're comparing these two, you have minus 9.04%, which is the difference between both periods. Persons killed, you have a difference of minus 11.85%, persons injured minus 1.01%, and pedestrian knockdowns of minus 10.25%. And then we go to the road crashes and casualty between January and July 2023. Cases reported 1,223 in July 2023 and 1,182 in July 2022. The vehicles involved are 2,099 this year and 1,991 last year. Persons killed 186 this year in July this year, and then 143 in July last year. Persons injured slightly higher, 1,328 persons injured in July this year and 1,221 slightly lower in July last year, which is 2022, and pedestrian knockdowns you see on your screen. Meanwhile, the National Road Safety Authority says some of the interventions rolled out are working. He commended JoyNews for the Drive Safe campaign. David Osafo-Adonting is Acting Director General of the National Road Safety Authority.
The little motivation is that comparing this year's figures to last year, we're seeing some reductions in some of the indicators. Marginal, as some of them may look though, but it is very refreshing to know that something positive is being done by way of interventions to have come and reflecting positively also on the figures. Indeed, the performance of every country's road safety management is to see figures going down. The crashes, the injuries, and the deaths. And those are the indicators that suggest that some intervention is receiving or reflecting positively on the roads. Yeah. So that is quite motivating. But indeed, we wish that we have far lower figures so we can see some more reductions by now. But the level of intervention that we are rolling out, the National Road Safety Authority itself as a lead agency, by way of the Drive Safe campaign that your media championed, and then the Stay Alive campaign that we also championed together, have gone deeper into the structure of road safety management in this country to the extent that campaign, education, publicity, advocacy, it's something that we can all say that we have made some relevant achievement, very significant. Yeah. Now, you don't get figures coming down for the sake of it. Okay. It is always contingent on a certain practical work you are doing on the ground. And that is how figures come down, because we have factors that are always fighting against us. The vehicle population is growing every day. Human population is growing every day. Indiscipline on our roads. And as you are aware, some malfunctioning of certain road facilities. These are all critical factors that give impetus for risk, people to take risk, and for that matter, result in the deaths.
And still on our Drive Safe campaign, dysfunctional traffic and streetlights are becoming a common phenomenon in Greater Kumasi. A number of road traffic accidents have occurred at some intersections as a result of the malfunctioning traffic lights coupled with some dysfunctional streetlights. Commuters have lamented delays on fixing these streetlights and traffic lights. Nana Bwachi Dankwa Yadam interacted with some commuters at Amakum in Kumasi.
In several communities, dysfunctional traffic lights and street lights have led to traffic congestion, wrong vehicle and pedestrian directions, motorist conflicts and prolonged travel times. The poor illumination at night and safety at road intersections have become a worry to motorists and commuters.
And this traffic light always, sometimes it goes on, sometimes it goes off. And even yesterday, as one of my brother was saying, there was a accident here with a VIP and a motorbike. And this traffic light is the inner city traffic light from Kumasi to Ejiso and Accra. And you can see behind you, you have seen that those from Accra to Kumasi, they just stop here and watch those from Kumasi to Accra to come before they move because of the traffic light. And I don't know who is responsible for the traffic light to, maintain or to repair when it goes off anytime. Is it the road minister or is it any other institution who's supposed to do the traffic light at all time? In Kumasi here, I can tell you and I can show you that those living in Kumasi, we don't have traffic light. And it's true. This is a highway traffic light and it's off. So those from the left and those from the right, who's supposed to pass and who's supposed to wait? And even the traffic light behind the street light behind the traffic light, you can see it's not working. Some is not working. So, and this is the dark spot. And here, armed robbers came around to rob us. If you are holding your back like this, with the way they thought you have some mobile phone or laptop, because we are all students living in this area. So we are pleading with the authorities to come on board. They should do it on time.
Hey, traffic, there be a problem. Like traffic, da Juma Krano.
We really do have a problem with our traffic lights over here. Sometimes when the drivers use the stretch, they do get confused.
There be accident. Na the M1 kakra say, "Hi Kumasi Center."
City authorities really do use the stretch, so I am really surprised as to why we have some dysfunctional traffic lights coupled with dysfunctional street lights.
Came from penny for came UST omuna manum si ahia no mofa eko omajumam ti traffic near sir M1 so omba ho meyehwe. Be accident. It's a problem there.
We really do record some accidents over here. I am quite surprised as to why we have a dysfunctional traffic light on such a huge stretch.
The
assembly member thought of working on these dysfunctional traffic lights. We got some MTTD officers to be stationed over here, but they could not do the job.
For we living here in Amokom, we are living a death trap concerning this stretch. If you look at the dysfunction of this traffic light, it's causing a lot of accident over here. Just recently, I think yesterday, there was a huge accident over here. That was VIP bus and a certain motorbike due to this dysfunction of this traffic light, and it's very disheartening and embarrassment. So we are calling on the authorities to come into our aid. Kumasi, we are very worried about this situation. Look at the children's park just opened here, and that place is called a headquarters of armed robbers because of the abandonment of the street lights. We don't have over there.
Reporting for Joy News, Nana Boachidankwa Kumasi.
Now, deaths from the Northeast regional floods have risen to 8 as 2 more bodies were found after a building collapsed on them in the Yonyo-Nonsuano district. Now, the incident occurred on Friday and the bodies have since been retrieved and buried. Meanwhile, authorities in Burkina Faso have begun the spillage of the Bagri Dam, which is expected to cause more flooding and potentially worsen the situation. Speaking to Joy News, the regional minister, Yidana Zakaria, has called on residents living and farming along the spillways to evacuate to safer grounds and stay alert. Correspondent Ilyas Otanko reports.
The Northeast regional authorities are still taking stock of the damages as a result of torrential rainfall in the region. 8 people are now confirmed to have lost their lives and 3 more injured and receiving treatment. According to the Disaster Management Organization, the 8 died through building collapse and drowning in the East and West Mamprese municipality and the Yonyo-Nonsuano district. The flooding has grounded transportation to certain parts of the region as road bridges have been washed away. Education and healthcare services have also been suspended in some of the affected areas, with several farmlands and houses destroyed, and many residents are still stranded in their communities with no access to other parts of the region. As part of its regional tour of the affected areas to assist local authorities conduct aftermath assessment, the regional minister Yidana Zakaria visited the Chirponi district, one of the districts hard hit by the floods. Here, the flooding has worsened the already bad state of the road network and the poor living condition of the people, as road bridges, farmlands, as well as food crops have been flooded and washed away. At Tikinga, where a bridge linking the Chirponi and Yonyo district was collapsed, a member of parliament, Tahido Abdurazak, explained the state of damage caused by the torrential rains.
Where we are specifically is known as Tikinga, which falls within the Chirponi constituency or Chirponi district. And across the Beta Bridge is Yonyo constituency. Ours here has been splitted once, but beyond Yonyo, I'm told it's splitted about 2, 3, 4 times of the main road. Yesterday was one chicken market day. Bonkurugu people, you couldn't access one chicken market due to this damage. But when we stand here and look at this way, we have communities along this side. We have Laptangu, Najiri, Patani, Labangani, Saku, Pampali, Saka, Pampali.
Let's stay a while longer in the Northeast region. We're joined on the line by John Alasan Kweku, who is Northeast Region's NADMO Regional Director. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your time here. How prepared are you to ensure that there's no other disaster or any deaths recorded as the Bagri Dam has been spilled?
Well, good afternoon to you and then good afternoon to the citizens across the country. And thank you for the question. NADMO is well prepared and well positioned itself strategically to to deal with any issue that will arise because of the public sewage. Even before the sewage, NADMO has already engaged residents moving along the White River. We did some intensive education, asking them to move on higher ground to have themselves safe. And those who are coming along the White River, we engage with the Ministry of Agri, and we give them some sensitization on the need to cultivate every variety, so that by the time the harvesters or the battery workers would have come there, they would have harvested their crops and left the field. Better still, we are on the ground. Monitoring the situation, we have been giving them updates as and when it demands, and then we are also ready to get the whenever they are hitting this data. On the 17th, they did a stage, and we realized that the water level at the White River started rising. It now started down. So we are also calling on residents and living around that White River to be very cautious of their lives. When it's like that, natural habitats of reptiles, it's also disturbed. So we have asked on the alert so that they will not be able to affect when the
Well, Mr. Kweku, are the residents responding to these calls to move to higher ground or safer grounds, as in the in anticipation of the water coming downstream?
Well, about their own safety, and this is not the first time they are doing the school. It's been an annual ritual for these of us living this part of moving around the country, and so some of them are called. They are moving to higher ground, and I was surprised to see everybody who would not like to comply with the prayer that we are making, because your life, for instance, is very, very important. Some of them, we are testify that some of them are moving to higher ground. For that one, shows that.
Well, are there contingency plans to ensure safety of lives and property?
As for the contingency plans, they have always been there. As I said, NADMO has positioned itself strategically in the upper east, in the northeast, in the northern region, and even in all the districts to handle the situation. As for that one, yes, NADMO has put in
And briefly before you go, following the floods earlier reported, you said that you weren't able to reach some communities to give aid to the people stranded there. What's the latest on the situation?
Well, still, some of the communities are not, but others are now affected. And so, with that says, we have made a big item related to that. And other donor companies are also coming in. Just this morning, I report from global community that they brought some support to the relief victims. Yesterday, the humanitarian aid, we also brought some aid. We are West Bank quality. This affects. Like I said, we have done a lot. Someone brought relief items to the victims. Even though it's not enough to put the smiles on the faces of the victims affected across. But we are also assuming, and I am very optimistic that other donor partners and individual organizations will come out with the so that we restore their normal life. So I can also use the media further make an appeal to the government public, those businessmen, big men, other organizations to come to the aid of it. Because we are talking about people's funds that are taken over by water. We are talking about people's food that is being washed away. We are talking about people's buildings that are pushed down because of the flood water. So it's not easy. And so you can understand that if somebody finds himself in this situation, you can understand. So that's why I'm calling a passion that's good. To all million Ghanaians to come and support this. so that we can also feel happy in their various lives.
Director, Northeast Region. You're still watching JoyNews Today. We'll be right back with business.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the business segment on JoyNews Today with me, Pius Kojobaka. Interest rates surged on the money market to 31.08% as the government borrowing spree on the domestic market continued. According to results of Treasury bills auctioned by the Bank of Ghana, the government got 3.45 billion cedis, but lower than the ambitious targeted amount of 3.96 billion cedis. Here is more.
The National Council for Curriculum and Assessment approved literacy and numeracy materials were handed over to the Education Directorate for distribution to schools. The Obuasi Municipal Director of Education says the book will complement efforts of the Directorate to improve the reading abilities of children in the municipality. George Alfred Kumson is director.
Interest rates in Ghana rank the highest in middle-income countries in Africa. The rate, however, lower than the inflation of 43%, indicating that the real rate of return on investment is negative. According to data from the Bank of Ghana, the yield on the 91-day bill increased by 0.61% to 26.70%. That of the 182-day bill reached 27.88% from 27.59% the previous week. The one-year bill inched up by 0.39% to 31.08%. Meanwhile, demand for the 182-day bill for the first time in several years exceeded the 91-day bill. Investors tendered 1.69 billion cedis for the 6-month bill. All the bids were accepted. Investors also offered 1.63 billion cedis for the 91-day bill, in which all the bids were accepted.
Anglo Gold Ashanti has partnered with the Otumfuo State to the Second Foundation to invest in the reading culture of children in public basic schools. 30,000 books worth 1.3 million cedis were distributed to pupils in Obuasi Municipal and Obuasi East Districts to improve reading skills. There is more in this report.
National Council for Curriculum and Assessment approved literacy and numeracy materials were handed over to the Education Directorate for distribution to schools. The Obuasi Municipal Director of Education says the book will complement efforts of the Directorate to improve the reading abilities of children in the municipality. George Alfred Kumson is Director of Education, Obuasi Municipal.
About 2 months ago, we had a training workshop on differentiated learning for the early grade teachers, that is from kindergarten to basic 3. And after the workshop, we put in a request that we'll be very grateful if they supply us with books which we'll use to teach the children. And here we are. They've brought the English, that's the literacy, and then the Ghana language books for the learners.
Prior to the distribution of books, AGA had trained 525 teachers at the preschool level to effectively teach children. Social Development and Gender Superintendent Mavis Nana Yache noted the initiative will strengthen the foundation of the education system and its operational areas.
And that's it for business. I am Pius Kojobaka. Dara will be here at 1 p.m. with the marketplace.
Let's do sports now on JoyNews Today with me, Muftau Nabila Abla. Ghana's national record long jump athlete Deborah Akwa says that jumping 6.50 at the ongoing World Athletics Championships was expected because she's been injured since the World Athletics Championship in Oregon last year. According to her, Ghanaians or the country Ghana had promised to support her, but unfortunately she was let down as the support never came.
I think my performance, even though it wasn't expected, I was expecting it. Like, not to say that I wasn't prepared to do whatever that happened, yesterday. But looking at the whole of last year coming into this year with this whole injury, no help coming from anybody, you know. Like it was very challenging because I ended up having to take care of my own self, spending money on this same injury, and then still not, you know, seeing any improvement. So I decided to call it a quit. Like I decided to not come to the World Champs because it got to a point where it was both my Achilles. So I had to talk with my coach, and then he was like, he think I should, you know, get the season over it.
That's your sports for now. We do have more sports stories on myjoyonline.com and also at 2 p.m. when we come your way with sports today. We appreciate your time.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Showbiz here on Joy News. And now beginning in 2011, the Chalawate Street Arts Festival has thrilled fans across the globe, particularly Ghanaians. The event has evolved to bring together thousands of people from all walks of life to experience the uniqueness of Ghanaian art and culture. It's time to get yet another experience with exciting time as we kickstart this year's edition in style. Here is a detailed lineup of events.
Monday, 3 p.m., we open with an all-white procession from the Osu Castle into the Osu community, through the Black Star Square and back to...
All white?
All white.
Any reason for that?
It's called a Day of Remembering.
What are we remembering?
We're remembering the departed.
Okay.
We're also remembering ourselves as in who we are as people. And also, it's also a celebration of everything that we've done over the last 13 cycles. There'll be performances in the castle, the opening exhibition for Chalawate by a really talented Ghanaian art collective called Afuabe. The name of the exhibition is This Is Not Make Believe. That's going to be at inside the Castle Gardens on Monday. It opens on Monday throughout the week until the 27th. And then from the 22nd, from Tuesday to Friday, we have the film labs and film salons. We're screening films from all over the world, but particularly from the continent and, directors of African descent. We have films from the Caribbean, Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago. And, when you see these films, you see how connected we are to these people, how similar our cultures are. One of the films is about stilt walkers, the stilt walking culture in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have that here, from Winneba all the way into Western region. Basically, if you take out the language they're speaking, they're talking about us. So this is an opportunity for us to also engage the Caribbean. I'm more interested in us connecting with other folks of African descent in the Caribbean, in South America, in Latin America. There's those people are much closer to us.
Meanwhile, Mancha, organizer of the event, has asked that creatives pay critical attention to archiving and keeping records of our history and traditions.
We need to take history more importantly. And we need to pay attention to our own history. Because we've had, this renaissance that we're experiencing, post-independence Ghana was like that. 60s into the 70s, even the 80s, even during the revolution, people were still actively, producing art. Cultural engineers were still around. But there is also no memory. There's no institutional memory. It's almost non-existent. So even when things are documented, we don't go back to it. So sometimes you speak to young people and I feel like they say what they know sort of starts from when they become conscious. So there isn't an awareness of the past. The past is like consistently erased, so people have nothing to point to or have no reference point. And sometimes, something happens, they say it was the first time in Ghana. And I'm like, no, this happened like 30 years ago. You can't claim first time. Also, these people, and they are very definite that this is the first time it's happening. You know, so it's like, are you? I don't know. Like, you can't just wake up and say things and be so sure that it's never happened in this country before.
There's more on Chalawate in our subsequent bulletins. That'll be all for Showbiz here on JoyNews Today. Good afternoon to you, Mamiesi.
Good afternoon, Becky. And she'll be there at Chalawate this afternoon. It's starting at 3 p.m. Becky, you'll be there, right?
Of course, of course.
Okay. And that's it for the bulletin here on JoyNews Today. We brought you sports as well and business. There's more news on myjoyonline.com.